talking about goal setting today, and I'm specifically going to use the sport of fitness as an example, and we're going to talk about how we can set up a plan, a structured plan to work towards a goal. And essentially all we're doing here is we're building a yearly plan for an athlete. So let's say that someone has a specific competition that they want to compete in, and that competition, for argument's sake, is in June let's go again, let's go with something in 12 months time, just for ease. And the first thing we need to think about is the competition a realistic goal for the athlete now? Because it's all very well me saying I want to go to the games next year, but if I came 10,000th in my country in the Open and I failed to qualify for a sanctional event, that's a pretty unrealistic goal. Now, that's quite an extreme example, but it is important that we have a thought about, is this realistic? The way we would do that is we would look at objective measures. So where has said person qualified in certain competitions? Have they done any competitions? If they haven't done any competitions, then maybe we just need to think about the goal and how ambitious it is, and is it like a top end competition? From there, if they haven't done any competitions, we need to put them through some testing pieces if it's a new client. If it's not a new client, then we should have an idea already as to where they sit. There's pretty clear barometers out there. If you're a male elite athlete, you need to be snatching well over 100 kilos. And if you don't snatch that, then you know that in one element you're way below the average. And so first off, I'm like, oh, that's a warning signal that maybe they're not quite ready for this competition. And it depends on the competition you're going for. If you're going for a small, locally organised competition that is aimed at beginners in the sport, then that might be fine. And so it's always just having that awareness of, is this goal realistic? And as a coach and as an athlete, you need to be aware of this, and we need to have realistic conversations around it, which is pretty hard. If it's you that has that goal as an athlete, then it can be pretty hard to accept that you're just not there yet. But for me, in my experience as a coach, the best clients I have, and the ones who make the most progress, are the best at accepting where they are. And often it takes a bit of an ego check. So let's assume that they are at a level that they can realistically aim to qualify for that competition. And what we do then is we look forward to 12 months time, and we need to think about where do they need to be at that 12-month point. And that 12-month point is that they're fully peaked and tapered for a competition, and we need to take into account the type of competition it is. So 5 weeks for the Open is very different to a 2-day sanctional event with 8 events in 2 days. And just having that understanding will help you design the peaking and intensification phase for the competition. The 5-week Open is going to need a much longer phase, and it's going to look slightly different to someone who's just peaking for a 2-day event. Qualifiers. When are the qualifiers? How likely are they to qualify within the qualifiers? If they're someone who's come in the top 5 in the qualifiers and the top 30 qualify every year for the last 3 years, we can probably fairly safely say, unless something's changed dramatically, that they're going to quite easily qualify, or they should. And so we don't need to do a huge peak for the qualifiers. But if there's someone who maybe is on that borderline of qualifying, then sadly for that person, they need to make that the focus of their year. If they qualify for the competition, then we almost start again from scratch. But there's no point in thinking about anything else until they've actually qualified. So we need to make sure that we're clear around how we're structuring our training towards that. It's all very well saying I'm going to do this competition and then start thinking about the competition 4 months beforehand. That's too late. You need to be well into your pre-intensification by then, depending on the competition. So if we know that we need a 10 to 14 day taper and we need a certain period of competition prep, and then we need a certain period of intensification, and then pre-intensification, and then we need an accumulation phase, we can start seeing that we're building the year into big blocks. And we really do need to be making it 8 to 12 months of preparation work. It might be that the first 4 to 6 months of that is purely accumulation. Now within that accumulation block, we're going through smaller cycles of accumulation and intensification, but overall it looks like accumulation. And maybe within that we do a bit of a testing week and we taper them for a week beforehand to see how they respond, especially if it's a new client or someone we haven't worked with that long. So as you're watching this, if you're a client of someone, if you're an athlete, you need to be thinking ahead to plan out your year, and so that you have clear goals as to where you want to be. Because to actually implement that properly, if your coach is designing the training properly and taking it seriously, there needs to be a clear structure there. For me as a coach, one of the biggest problems I face is people who haven't got clear goals and are looking to perform at the highest level. They need to have that laid out in front of them and be pretty clear about it and pretty focused. Now within that, we can also have, if we've got our main competition, and that's our gold standard competition, we can have silver and bronze events scattered through the year for competition practice, for helping practice tapering, just for experience. We don't want too many, and we've got to accept as an athlete that we're not going to perform as well in those as we'd like to. It's not going to be about winning the competition or doing our best performance. It's actually going to be about experience. It's going to be about practicing your game day nutrition. It's going to be about practicing intensifying, peaking and tapering and getting that refined. So I think it's something I see is people just doing 4 or 5 competitions a year, maybe less, maybe 3 or 4, and going all in on every single one. And just training as normal, having a taper a week before, and nothing really changes. Training's got to look different through the year. I think I always find weightlifting, elite weightlifting, a great example of this. You look at someone, put the drugs to one side, Ilya Ilin, he was famous for taking 6 to 12 months off completely from weightlifting after an Olympic competition. And so after the Olympics, he'd just take time off. He wouldn't do any weightlifting. And then he'd come back, he'd slowly build up, and the next 3.5 years were spent building towards the Olympics, and that was all he cared about, the Olympics. Now there'd be world championships in between, there'd be national competitions, he'd max out at certain points, but all of it was aimed towards that gold standard competition. And you see that in athletics as well. So in these individual sports, you can see this really clearly. And I think too many people in the sport of fitness lose track of this. So we've got a competition in 12 months, and we've worked back through those 12 months, knowing that, let's say we need a 2-week, so that was what I said, a 2-week taper, we need a 4 to 6 week competition phase where it's pretty much shit has hit the fan, and we're really pushing this person, this client, into overreaching. It's a fine line for a coach to cut, because when you get into that, the person's close to being injured, they're potentially going to get sick, and we're trying not to have that, but we also need to push them pretty hard. And then we've got like a pre-intensification or intensification phase. There's loads of different names for it, it doesn't really matter, but you can understand the principles of what I'm talking about. And then we have an accumulation phase before that, where we have accumulation and intensification, we're rolling through it, maybe doing some competitions. And that should take you back to where you are today, and that should inform you as to what you need to be doing in the next few weeks in terms of your training. And so it should inform you as to why maybe you're not doing sexy shit. Maybe as an avatar, you have a weakness in your upper body gymnastics. Maybe you're performing at a decent level, but you always find that in those workouts where particularly pushing movements come up, for example, and maybe your strict press is way off where it should be as well. Well, you know what the focus is for the next few weeks, the next few months, in fact. And so when you're in the corner doing Philly presses and Arnold presses at tempo, and you're watching people just do random metcons of muscle ups and wall balls and whatever the fuck they want at maximal intensity, and you're walking out the gym with a bit of a pump, knowing you've got an hour of easy conditioning to do in the evening or tomorrow morning, you know why you're doing that. And again, this is something people miss out. Elite athletes and those who aspire to be very good or elite athletes, you've got to work fucking hard. But that doesn't mean blowing yourself into oblivion every session just doing random volume. So you've got to think about that. And this is how I would start looking at structuring someone's training year. Hope that's helped. If you've got any questions, drop me a line, and I'll put something else up soon.